Hey guys, it's Arcade and I'm back with another video, and in this one I'm gonna tell you a few music production tips and tricks that a lot of pro producers use, but you do not. I actually got these from a lot of the masterclasses from these producers. I watched a few hours of them and picked out a few of the best tips I heard. So yeah, like the video to see more content like this, and make sure to subscribe as well so you don't miss another video. Now today I'm gonna tell you about the tips from Martin Garrix, Brooks and KSHMR. Also, this video is brought to you by Skillshare. We're gonna talk a little bit more about that later. So yeah, let's get to it. Tip number one is about layers and sounds that don't need to actually sound good by themselves, but will sound good in the mix overall. So I'm gonna show you an example here. I have this future bass track that I made in one of my videos, and this tip is by Martin Garrix. He said it in his masterclass. So yeah, there's a lot of layers in this drop, but here is one odd sound that actually doesn't really sound that great by itself. Now you would think this sound wouldn't fit into this future bass track, it's more like dubsteppy and stuff, but when you pair it up with the other sounds, it kind of gets lost, but keeps that dirty bass in the sound and makes all the other sounds stand out a lot more. So together it sounds like this. And without that sound, it would sound like this. So yeah, so empty, and when you add it back in, it's like gritty and dirty, way better. But by itself, it's sort of an odd sound to use, but then again, you always want to check how it sounds with all the other sounds. So that's one of the tips Martin Garrix said in his masterclass. So whenever you're picking out your sounds, make sure to play them with the rest of the sounds as well, so you can hear how they sound together, not how the sound sounds by itself. So that's tip number one. Let's move on. This next one is also by Martin Garrix, and it's about layering your sounds. Everybody heard of stack the layers. What you might not know is some of the layers don't even need to be that loud. So in this example, I have this progressive house track I'm working on, and as you can see, there's a lot of layers for the leads. I'm gonna play the whole thing. So that's the example, and let's take a look at the layers. So this is like the main layer. So that's like the main layer, but it's missing a lot of the frequencies. So that's why you want to add way more layers, and some of them don't need to be even that loud. Here's the second layer. Here's the third one. And again, this one is super low. It just adds a bit more frequencies to the sound. This one. And some of them can be weird. And then we have this white noise as well. So yeah, by itself it sounds like this. But with all the other layers, it sounds like this. So yeah, right off the bat, it's like fatter and has more frequencies, and it will sound way more powerful in the whole drop. And that's just by adding more and more layers to the sound. So yeah, you might think they make no difference when they are quiet, but they actually do. So make sure to stack the layers. That's the lesson from this tip. And I'm sure you heard about it before, but it's never bad to repeat some of the essential things that you might have forgot to do as much. So yeah, that was tip number 2. And before we continue, I want to mention the sponsor of today's video, which is Skillshare. And don't skip just yet, because this might actually be helpful for your music production progress. So Skillshare is a platform where you can learn any new skill, and they have very detailed videos and classes about that particular skill. Right now, if you use the link below, the first 1,000 people get 2 months of Skillshare Premium for free. So you will be able to watch any of the classes that are on the platform. For example, if you want to learn more about music production, you can type in FL Studio, and right off the bat you have a bunch of classes about FL Studio. The class I would recommend right now is if you type in piano and you go down here, this class by Kaiwen, Play the Piano by Ear. That is pretty much my favorite class. I think when it comes to making melodies and compositions, the best way to do it is to know how to play the piano by ear. If you actually know that, you can make melodies just by imagining them in your head, which is the easiest and the most efficient way to make melodies. So yeah, check out this class. Link will be below in the description. As I said, if you use the link below, you'll get 2 months of Skillshare Premium for free, and after that, it's as low as $10 a month. Anyways, now let's get back to the video. Now let's take a look at tip number 3, and this one is the last one by Martin Garrix, and it's about stereo manipulation. So this one is a big one for when you are mixing your songs. So what he said in his masterclass is to keep your low frequencies in the middle of the mix, and your high frequencies, make them stereo, spread them wide to the size of the mix. So here's an example of that, and I'm gonna show you how to do it as well. So I have this stereo shaper here. If we choose the preset mid, so if you choose the mid, all your frequencies, the sounds will be in the middle of the mix. There will be no stereo separation. So it sounds like this. And these are the chords, right? Sounds pretty dull. And when you actually put the Stereoize 2 preset on it, which makes it wider, it sounds like this. Which is a huge difference, I would say. If you are listening on your phone, maybe you don't hear it, but on the speakers or headphones, you should hear it, and it makes a big difference in the whole song as well. So make sure to make your higher frequencies, like chords and leads, stereo, and the bass stays in the middle. That will take your mix to the next level right off the bat. Also, he mentioned to delete all the low frequencies from your high-pitched sounds, like leads and chords, and keep them for the bass frequencies. I always say that as well. Make sure your bass is in the low frequencies, and your leads and chords are in the higher frequencies, so no sub-frequencies are present in those sounds. So yeah, just try this on your song, and you should hear a difference right away. Okay, next tip comes from Brooks, and this one I don't really need to show you. He's just saying that you should not worry about creating your own presets as much. You can use the presets from sample packs. So if you want good sample packs, go on splice.com, where you can pick out from thousands or millions of presets and samples, or check out some of my sample packs. Link will be below in the description. But essentially, worry more about making good melodies, making good mix, instead of like creating these sounds. It's good to know how to use like Serum or any other plugin. It's also sometimes a waste of time to create all your sounds from scratch, because if you want to make a sound like this one, why not use a preset if it already exists, you know? You would end up on the same sound anyways, but it would just take longer to get there. So there's no shame in using presets, so don't worry about it as a beginner. That's one tip Brooks gave in his masterclass. Another tip he gave is to layer sounds that have nothing to do with each other to make the other sounds stand out. So I have 2 examples for this. Here's one where I use this bass and I layer it with random effects. These effects have nothing to do with the bass, but if you listen to it in the song, it sort of sounds like they belong to the bass. So yeah, just adding random effects to make the bass stand out more, make it more interesting, is a great tip. Without it, it's like this. But with it, of course, adds a lot more. So yeah, that's one example where you can use this, but another example, and what he meant by it, is this one, for example, where I have this vocal, and let me play it without the other sounds first. So we go like this. So we have this vocal, and it's not as snappy. So to make it stand out, we can use some percussion and layer them along with the vocal. So the rhythm of the vocal is like this. So we layer the percussion on the same rhythm, and the percussion sounds like this. But we're gonna pair it up with the vocal, and it sounds like this. So yeah, right off the bat, the vocal stands out more, even though the percussion are not like vocal sounds, but they make the vocal stand out more because they play along with the vocal. And I also added the snare, which is more like a fill, but also makes the vocal stand out a bit more. So yeah, what he was trying to say is you can layer sounds that are sort of unlikely to work with them, but at the end, they will make them stand out. So the percussion have nothing to do with the vocal really. But when you pair it up, they sort of make it more clicky and make it stand out more in the mix. So you could use this in the drop as well, or anywhere in the song. So yeah, that's the tip by Brooks. To make some sounds stand out, layer them with like a percussion or some other sounds that have nothing to do with the sound, but it makes it stand out in the mix. Next tip comes by KSHMR, and in his masterclass, he taught a lot about like theory of music and mainly focused on how the idea of your song is more important than the actual skill. Really what you should focus on a lot of the times is to have a good idea of what kind of song you are trying to make, instead of like trying to be really technical with it and make everything sound great. Just come up with an original idea in mind and focus on that instead of trying to focus on the technical side of producing. So yeah, a lot of the times you're just gonna have a lot more fun and you are gonna actually create songs that are interesting. That's one tip by KSHMR himself. Next one is a bit more technical, and it's using bass bends to make your bass sounds more interesting. So here's an example of that. And let me show you how to do it. So you go to your bass sound, which for me is in Nexus. And if you are using Nexus, you need to go to modulation and change the pitch bend max to 12 and minus 12. And if you are using any other plugin, chances are you need to set this up as well. So for example, in Serum, you would need to set it up right here to 12. So some of the plugins require this. I use Nexus for this one. And then what you want to do is set the range to 12 in here as well as your FL Studio channel pitch. And then basically you select the part where you want to make the automation. You right click the pitch, create automation clip, and here's the automation. Then just right click, put it down, put it up, however you want it. Just sort of experiment with different bands, and we can preview it. Oh yeah, one thing I recommend is to right click on the first point and copy the value, and then paste it everywhere you want the same pitch. So you want to end up at the same pitch, not like some random pitch, because then everything will be off key. We can do like downwards bend. So yeah, just a bunch of bends to mix it up, to make your bass a bit more interesting. Here's how it sounds in the actual mix. Without it, it would be like this. And one thing to mention, this is the pattern of the bass. I sort of make these short notes where the pitch transition is to make it stand out even more, to make it kind of stuttery. But it's up to you how you do it. Just try it out, try out this trick where you use a bunch of pitch bends to make your bass sounds more interesting. You can use this for chords or leads as well. So yeah, just use your creativity and hopefully you come up with something interesting. That is all for the tips for today. Those are a few of the tips that pro producers use. And let me know if you want to see more videos like this. I can definitely come up with more tips by pro producers. Also, don't forget to check out Skillshare and get your 2 months of Skillshare Premium for free, link below. And next video I will show you how to make this project from scratch actually, so stay tuned for that. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss it. But yeah, this is it for this video. Hopefully you learned some new tips that you can go and try out right now. Other than that, thank you for watching and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.